Greetings, Bassketeers. Josh Fossgreen here with some more bass lessonage. Today, I'm going to show you a couple really gnarly left-hand fingering exercises that I've been working on that I thought you might be interested in. But more so than just show you the exercises, I want to show them to you and then talk about how to actually do these well and move efficiently with your left hand. It's something that I'm really interested in, that I continue to try to perfect as the years go by, although can one ever really perfect one's left-hand technique? One does not know. Anyway, so download the PDF. I think the link's over here, and it's free and you can download it, and I've got these exercises written out kind of in brief. So basically what we're doing, I'll just kind of noodle through it as I talk. We're taking some really simple fingering patterns. With exercise 1, it's just going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, index, middle, ring, pinky. But instead of just playing all 4 of those on one string like this, and then moving on to the next string, okay, then going up a fret, coming back across. This is a great exercise too, and it's one you see around a little more commonly. It's something I've talked about in the past. You just pick a pattern, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or another one, and then go across the strings. Well, I thought of an interesting variation on that recently, and I'm sure I'm not the first to think of it, but it was quite a light bulb for me, which is to take 1 or 2 of those fingers and transplant them over to another string. So within the pattern, rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4 all on the E string, I'll put my second finger, I'm just going to try not to flip you off, on the A string. So I'll go E string, A string, then E, E, and then move that around. So now it's a 2-string chunk. So I occupy the E and the A, then I move over to the A and the D, same thing, then D and the G. So we can only do 3 now before we move up or down the neck and repeat it, because we're using 2-string chunks, we only have 3 of those. Okay, so exercise 1, we're just starting arbitrarily on the 7th fret with our index finger. We go 1, 2, 3, 4 with 2 on the A string, then cross over, do the same thing, 1 string further over. Then we move our hand up a fret, do the same thing, coming back down. D string, G string, D string, A string, D string, E string, A string. And you can just keep that going across the neck as far as you want to go. Let's play this together at 60 beats per minute as 16th notes. If this is the wrong tempo for you, then after we get through it, just pause the video and set your metronome where you actually need it. Because the idea is to do this really well, not to do it as fast as you possibly can right out of the gate. Okay, so here we go. We'll start at the 7th fret and then we'll go, I don't know, 6 repetitions or something, just moving up a fret every time. So for our first chunk, we're starting on the 7th fret, then the next chunk we're starting on the 8th fret, coming back down the strings, etc., etc. You get the idea. 2, 3, E, and So that's the basic idea for exercise 1. Before we move on to exercise 2, I want to talk about some of the things that make left-hand technique good, because you could play these notes but not necessarily be working on your left-hand technique. And the idea is when you do these exercises, you want to be thinking about some of these key variables that I'm going to talk about. There are a lot of variables to efficient left-hand technique, and I don't think I'm going to think to say all of them in this video, but I'll at least try to hit some important ones. Thing number 1, well, we'll start with thing number 0, which is to sit or stand comfortably and keep breathing and stay relaxed, which is something I could do a better job of while I'm filming videos. So that's the starting point, is as relaxed as possible, and that translates to your whole body and your torso and your shoulder all the way down to your arm and your hand. And in my reckoning, what you generally want to shoot for with your left hand is for your hand to look like what it looks like if it's just hanging relaxed by your side, which if I just lift it up, you can see tend to have either a straight or a slightly curved wrist bent forward and then curved fingers forward. So if you just take that relaxed curved hand and apply it to your bass, that's your starting point. You want to be relatively perpendicular to the strings, okay, not Mr. Slanty guitar player like this. See that difference? Bad, good, bad, good. For the most part, good and bad are relative in this case, just about efficiently playing notes when you need to play notes efficiently, which you don't always need to do. If you're just playing, then your left hand technique doesn't really matter. But if you're playing a lot of notes, then it really does. So relaxed hand, fingers perpendicular, and then I would say the main thing to think of when you're first starting this exercise is keep your fingers as close to the neck as you can. So this is what you don't want to do. Okay, see all that extra movement, and also you can hear my playing's a little more like clackety and sloppy sounding. Just partially just because I'm talking and playing at the same time, but also it's because my fingers are moving too much, so it's just going to tend to introduce noise. So rather, I want to keep my fingers as close to the strings as possible, especially, when they're not being used, because if you're using a finger, you're pressing down with it and you're fine. It's when you're not pressing down with fingers, they tend to go flying off into space. Okay, so keep your fingers close, and that's the first thing to think about. More nuanced things following from that are to not only keep them close, but to actually keep them down at times when it's appropriate. And you'll see that even more in exercise 2, but in terms of exercise 1, you can, if you watch my index finger, we're only playing the index finger note 1 out of every 4 notes, right? But after I play with the index, I'm not actually leaving the string with the index finger. I'm not pressing down with it anymore in this case, because I'm not coming immediately back to it. But you can see as I'm going 2, 3, 4, my index finger isn't off the strings. It's actually staying there touching, and that's a great general attitude to take. Attitude. Can fingers have an attitude? Anyway, if they can, it's a great attitude for your fingers to have to stay planted on the strings, especially the index finger, because it's kind of at the back of the hand in relation to the pickups, so it can do a lot of good muting work when you want it to do that. In this case, if I'm keeping my index finger on the strings, it's keeping my high strings muted that I'm not using as I'm playing on the E and the A string, which is a muting thing that's really hard to do with the right hand. So, God, I could go on for a really long time about left hand efficiency. I'm going to try to be succinct. So keep your fingers close, keep your fingers on the strings when it's appropriate, and there's a lot of different contextual times when you should actually stay pressed down versus when you should just be touching the string versus when you should actually leave the string, like if you're playing chords and you want stuff to ring really clearly. So I'll leave that to your discernment of when things should actually be prepped like that, but it's often the right thing to do, especially if I was going all on the same string, like something like that. Then I actually want to keep fingers pressed down at all times if they're behind the fretting finger that's currently being used, because I'm going to come right back to them. Blah, blah, blah. Last thing I want to talk about before we move on to exercise 2 is anticipating moves. Okay, these are all very related things, but watch my index finger here. So we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my next note's going to be index on the A string. So watch my index finger here. So while I'm on my pinky note, my index finger is already gliding over to the next note that's going to be played. So starting out, I got my index finger here, my middle finger is already ready to go on its note, then my ring fingers, so I'm basically always at least one note ahead of where I'm actually playing, if I can be, and in this case it's pretty easy to do that through the whole exercise. So then coming back down, same thing, as I'm on my ring and especially the pinky, the index is already sliding over to where it's going to go next. And that's really helpful. It really smooths out your movement. So a lot of times when you lift a finger, it's not going to be up, it's going to be on a diagonal towards another string if that's the next destination you need. So if you're always a note ahead of yourself with these fingering exercises, everything will just tend to be cleaner and you'll be able to get to higher tempos and still sound good. I was going to have us play this at a faster tempo for the second run, but let's do it at 60 again because you've got a lot of stuff to think about now. And again, if this tempo is too fast for you, you're not even going to be able to think about this stuff. You're just going to be scrambling to get the notes. So take it at a tempo that's right for you on your own time. Otherwise, this video won't be that helpful, and I would really like it to be helpful. So please take this into your own practice. But here we go together at 60. And this is in 3/4, so you get 3 beats, and then we're in 1, 2, E, and 3, E, and Okay, great work. Thanks for sticking in here with me. Feels like it's going to be a long video, but I think it's worth it. There's a lot of really important stuff to know about left hand efficiency. So we're going to move through exercise exercise 2 a lot quicker because I've already blah blah blah'd about all the efficiency stuff. So exercise 2 is very similar to exercise 1. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going 4, 3, 2, 1. So we're just flipping the fingering pattern in reverse, and then we're putting our ring finger note on the adjacent higher string rather than our middle finger note. So we're going 4, 3, 2, 1, with 3 being on the next string up. And then same thing up a string, same thing up a string. Then we move up a fret, come down the strings. And this one, in general, pinky to index patterns I find a lot more challenging than index towards pinky patterns. Because you have to think a lot more about having fingers prepped in advance. And also I find, at least for me, the pinky tends to want to fly a lot, and I found that to be true with students as well. Like the pinky's the finger it's hardest to get from like flying off the neck into space. So when you finish with your pinky note in particular, watch out for doing that move, because there's no point in being up here. All the notes are down here. So, and if you watch my hand, my pinky moves a little bit more than I want it to. It's gotten down from inches to centimeters, but it still could be worked on. So let's work on it together. 60 beats per minute. We're starting on the 10th fret, which is basically the same as our 7th fret position from before, because we're starting on the pinky. Index note's still going to be on the 7th fret. We'll do the same thing. We'll do like 6 repetitions until our index finger gets up to the 12th fret. Okay, 60 beats per minute, 3/4 time. 1, 2 E and 3 E and Okay, I went a little further on that than I said I would, but that's fine. You get the idea. One last thing, right hand on this is the other thing I really like about these exercises with the string change integrated into the pattern, is it creates a string crossing workout for your right hand also. So you have a couple options here. Both of these patterns are the same right hand wise, right? We're flipping the fingering, but we're still going low string, high string, low string, low string on each of the patterns of 4. So you can either alternate strictly here, that works fine. So you just go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, or same thing with the other pattern, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Alternately, you can incorporate raking with the right hand pattern, in which case it would be more like 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 1, 2. So raking makes things work out in a weird way when you're doing groups of 2 and 4, because it often creates 3 patterns. Anyways, I encourage you to play with this with raking and without raking, because being prepared for a lot of possibilities with the right hand, I think, is the key to not stumbling over fast, complex passages. Okay, that's enough bass lesson for today, right? So those 2 exercises, you could do so much with that conceptually. You can take the same string arrangement and change the finger pattern. You go 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 4, 2, 3, 1, 4, 3, 2, 4, 2. There's 24 possibilities, basically, if you do the factorial of 4 fingers, 4 times 3 times 2 times 1. And you got the 2 right hand options to rake or not to rake. That is the question. You can have 2 fingers on a different string rather than just one. So you go E, A, E. Okay. You could have your adjacent string be lower instead of higher, like this. Okay, so I'm still doing 1, 2, 3, 4, but 2 is on the lower string rather than the higher string from the main one. Lots of possibilities. I really encourage you to play with this. I feel like it's really leveling up my left-hand technique game, more so than the single string exercises, which I've been shedding on and off for years. Okay, I really hope this is helpful. If it is, I really encourage you to check out my Patreon community, where you can get some cool rewards for supporting me there, including my music rec of the week, and access to downloads of music and lots of other cool stuff. And you can also buy my books on scales and arpeggios and blah-de-blah at joshfossgreen.com/books. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll be back at you soon.